Good Monday evening, and welcome to From the Halls of Justice. We have with us tonight a very special guest in the studio. We have with us Mr. Mark Tesler.
Tseselsky.
Wait.
Hey, don't worry about it. You and I have something in common. We have one of them Polish last names.
Yes.
Don't
Okay.
feel bad that you can't pronounce it. I got news for you. I can't pronounce it either. I'm just guessing.
But the ski part, I should have got right. One of the things when my ex-husband proposed to me, in order to get me to marry him, was that he said, "You know what? There is a magazine named after us."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the SKY and SKI. But we're SKY. You should marry me, and I was like, "Oh, okay." No. But anyway,
Whatever
I'm sorry.
works.
Yes, I apologize for that.
No
so
worries.
fix it for me, Mark
Tseselsky.
Tseselsky.
Yeah, I heard it pronounced in Polish and I could barely repeat it, so don't feel bad.
Okay, all right. Well, we have to get this right because your wife may be watching. So, Mrs. Tseselsky,
She may
please.
be the only one.
No, there better be a whole bunch of people out there. Forgive me, I'm
That's
sorry.
Okay, no worries.
It'll be a fun show. Will you, number one, you're a fabulous attorney.
Thank you.
You've been practicing for 12 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And you love dependency. You're in family law, but part of family law is the juvenile dependency.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about an overview and expand into some details later? So,
Sure.
But where did you get a fancy name like the Tseselsky?
That's a good question. My fancy name comes from my Polish Jewish ancestor, my great-grandfather, who actually came over from what was then part of the Russian Empire, but now is Poland.
Okay.
He came over to another part of the empire, and through combination of different members of my family coming together in one city, I was born. But yeah, my last name is Polish, but I don't speak a lick of Polish.
Not a lick of Polish. Okay, all right.
Jeszcze Polska nie jest niewiele, that's all I know.
That's very good. That's very good. I know how to say didingi.
I speak enough Russian
You know what that is?
to understand that.
My ex-husband taught me that. Show me the money.
That's funny.
Okay. Now, and you said that you immigrated to the United States?
I did.
Okay.
I grew up in the former Soviet Union, and I immigrated to the United States in 1992.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I was about 14 and a half at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Fairfax High School right here in West Hollywood.
Oh my goodness. What was that like for you?
It was very different. When you first come to a different country, it's a very different world.
Mm-hmm.
But I came at the right time. I came old enough to remember the old world,
Okay.
and young enough to adapt to the new world.
Okay. All right.
Really, I adore and love this country because it's literally the only place where I can be all three at the same time: Russian, Jewish, American. Nobody cares about my last name. Pay your taxes, obey the law, and go for it. Succeed in this.
You sound like my ex-husband. He's Russian, Jewish, but in this country was the only place he could be Christian. That's what, that's what he said.
It's all.
His mom and dad were like, what? No. Now, tell us a little bit about what is your educational background. You told us about Fairfax High School.
Right. I went to college at UCSB, Go
Okay.
Gauchos. I also, one of those 3 years I spent in England.
Okay.
That was a great experience. I highly recommend it, going abroad to
Great.
broaden your horizon to study. And then I went to Loyola Law School right here in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Great place to get practical experience.
Right.
Love my law school. And I graduated, I became an attorney in 2005. So
Beautiful.
It was actually my 13th, well, it will be 13th year later this year.
Loyola has been getting a lot of press with they've gone back and reviewed some criminal records, and they've been doing a really great job with getting some innocent released from lack of evidence.
I think Professor Laurie Levinson, who taught me evidence, is part of that.
Awesome.
But
So now, why did you choose law? And I want you to, I hope the microphone is turned up loud enough, but I want to hear that response. So why did you choose law?
I chose law because I wanted to help people, and also because I'm a bookworm.
Okay.
Growing up, I had really few passions. I loved history, I loved to read, I loved to argue, and as I grew up, I realized that while I loved history, it wasn't really the most practical career choice, and I got that immigrant mentality, I got to be practical. And law was something that I was always passionate about, just naturally gravitated to it, and always liked to ask questions. When I got into college, I really followed parallel tracks. I was kind of a pre-law, and I was also considering career in history. And at some point I decided, you know what, it's law all the way. And I applied to law school, got in, and you know, the more I started doing it, the more I realized that what really drew me to law is the human interaction.
Okay.
You know, with history, you get to learn stuff at a very deep level, and I like that. But when I was doing my senior honors thesis in my last year in college, I realized I love the library, but not that much. I want to get out once in a while. I want to actually talk to people, and you know, law has really worked out in that sense.
Well, let's get into some more details about juvenile dependency law.
Yeah, people often ask me why that particular area of the law,
Right.
of all the different areas. I kind of have a half joke, half truth about it, which is that working with the social workers reminds me of home.
No, that is funny. That's funny.
What I often notice, and I don't think that's apparent to the social workers themselves, is that they tend to get bureaucratic, just like the Soviet apparatchiks did. And I see part of my job as trying to level the playing field a little bit. I understand they have an important job to do, and you know, they're there to protect children, but the law is designed in such a way so that it is balanced. Juvenile dependency is about protecting children, but it is also about protecting children while protecting the rights of the parents and guardians. And everybody has a role to play. Social workers, you know, they got to do their job. My job is to, like I said, level the playing field, remind of the other side of the law. The law is balanced. The law protects the rights of both children and parents.
I was going to say, this is like, what is the goal of juvenile dependency? So you would say it's to level the playing field?
My role, but I think the goal of juvenile dependency is to help families, to protect children.
Okay, right.
This is something that is often misunderstood because people tend to experience social workers in a very adversarial circumstances, especially at the beginning, because it feels overwhelming. You know, government knocks on your door. You don't understand what your rights are. You don't understand how things work, and social workers come and say, "We don't like the way you parent. We're going to take your kids away. We're going to ask you, you know, uncomfortable questions. We're going to want to talk to your kids alone. We want to see them take their clothes off so we can make sure there are no marks or bruises." So people tend to experience social workers in juvenile dependency as a very heavy burden that government puts on them. But the goal is to protect children. But the part that I feel like is often forgotten is it's to protect children while at the same time respecting the parents and caretakers. That's the part that is often left out because social workers are so focused on we gotta protect the children. They often feel like, and that's another thing that reminds me kind of communists that may make them uncomfortable to hear me say this, but they feel like they can cut corners. That's how
Who can cut corners?
the social workers. They often feel like they have a higher goal. Like the communists thought, okay, we're going to build paradise on earth for the workers, and they felt the ends justify the means. And I often feel like the social workers, they have a laudable goal to protect the children, and they often feel like, well, you know what, that empowers us to cut corners and not worry so much about protecting parents' rights. And that's where I see my job.
I was going to say, so that's where the attorney comes in.
Right, because it's not a popular position to be in. If,
Right.
you know, let's be honest, you mentioned my wife earlier.
Yeah.
You know, she happens to be a licensed social worker. You know, she helps with people who are
Oh, bless her heart.
dying. So it's a tough job, but
Dying?
yeah, she works
Hospice?
at hospice.
Oh, bless her heart.
But she, you know, she's got the same training as DCFS workers. And if I gave her a hypothetical, you know, 9 times out of 10 she'd be like, "That's right. Good job, social workers." And I'm like, well, you know, listen, you know, you got to look at it from, you know, both sides of the coin here. Yes, you know, parents did wrong, but is it really necessary to remove?
Well, you know, on the news right now, it's a really big thing about the family
Yeah.
up in Paris,
Yeah.
where, you know, not all of them are children, but because they were, I guess, treated so badly. I mean, who puts 3 or 4 pies on the table in front of their children and then they don't allow the kids to eat? I don't get that.
See, that's an easy example because everybody can agree that that's child abuse.
Okay.
But
I think they're a little loco. Yeah, just a little crazy.
here's the thing that I think is the hardest for people to understand about our juvenile dependency system and how it's set up, okay? That example that you just mentioned, everybody can agree on, right? But that's not how the law is written. The law says it's a risk of harm, okay? Well, what is risk? How do you define risk? What may be risky to one person could be.
So there was no risk with putting the pies on the table?
No.
Yeah, there's
See-
no risk.
See, I think that where you're coming from at this is, well, obviously we need to protect the children. I agree with you. That in that case, I don't think you're going to find anybody who's going to look at the situation and go, well, there's 2 sides to every story.
That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to hear from them, like, were you teaching them something in discipline? I mean, I don't get it, you know.
That's just flat out wrong. Okay, there's no excuse for it.
I mean, put some
Whatever their-
hamburgers, French fries, or a salad on the table with it.
Whatever their twisted logic. But here's what I find, okay? And I admit that my point of view is by design a little bit skewed, right? Because when people have good experiences with social workers, they don't feel the need to hire private counsel. Let's be honest, right? So I deal with the tough cases.
Okay.
And in those tough cases where it's not so clean and cut, then it becomes more subtle. Is it really necessary to go this heavy? Is it really necessary to detain? What county council will tell me when we're just having friendly, off-court conversations is they'll tell me, look, you don't see most of the cases that we deal with because we don't detain a lot of them. So, fair point. I don't get to see that side of it. I get to see once things go really haywire.
Really wrong, right.
And they end up in the court system, and that's when I come in. And oftentimes, I have a heart-to-heart with my esteemed colleagues on the other side, and I go, come on, was this really necessary? We just spent a lot of resources as a society. There has to be a better way. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So for you, who are the main stakeholders in juvenile dependency law?
That's an excellent question, because I think it's often, people kind of don't see the forest for the trees.
Okay.
So it's important to get the bird's eye view. The stakeholders are, well, let's start with the children, obviously.
Okay.
Then you got the social workers,
Okay.
Child Protective Services. In Los Angeles County, the agency in charge of that is Department of Children and Family Services, more generally known as Child Protective Services. DCFS is the acronym that they use. And also you've got the foster parents who take care of the children while it's necessary to remove the children from the parents. Oftentimes foster parents are also relatives
Okay.
or on their way to becoming foster parents.
Okay.
And you also have the mandatory reporters, the people who make the call whether or not there needs to be a referral. Not all of these people are represented by council.
Okay.
The people who are represented by council are the social workers. They're represented by the county council.
Okay.
The parents are represented, for the most part, by a nonprofit law firm called LADO, or Los Angeles Dependency Lawyers, Inc., which
Okay.
is subdivided into 5.
If they can't afford private counsel.
Exactly.
Okay.
They get subsidized
Oh, good.
lawyers, court appointed.
Okay.
Then the children.
And that's called LADO?
LADL, L-A-D-L,
Okay.
Los Angeles
Legal.
Dependency Lawyers Incorporated.
Okay.
It's a nonprofit. Same situation for the children. They're also represented by a nonprofit called CLC, Children's Legal Center Los Angeles.
Okay.
And they're also court appointed. They also act as guardians ad litem for the purposes of the case. And you've got the social workers. You got the social workers who are assigned to the courthouse. You got the social workers who are out in the field. The first line are the emergency social workers. They go out and investigate. Then once they make the decision to remove or not, sometimes they don't remove, but they still have a case. There is the services workers who basically deal with families, providing them resources. Then there's dependency investigators. They're the people, think of them as
Okay, let's go back to it. Services workers. What?
services workers. So that when parents get into the system,
Okay.
they don't know what's going on. They don't know, okay, if they're suspected of drug abuse, they need to set up their drug testing, right? If
Okay.
a relative wants to have children placed with them,
Okay.
they got to go through testing.
All right.
If a parent needs to take parenting classes, where do they go for parenting classes? The job of the services worker is to set up all of that, also set up visitation,
Okay.
which often has to be monitored. So they do an important job, and they start working immediately once the case gets going, really soon after emergency workers get into it. But those are kind of the stakeholders, the social workers, the children, the parents, their attorneys, the people who take care of the children while the children are removed from the parents, and the services providers, the people who run programs, individual counseling, parenting classes, drug courses, that kind of thing.
Well, what is the hardest thing for an outsider to understand about juvenile dependency law?
The hardest thing to understand is how little it takes to get into trouble.
Okay.
Because this is a perfect example. It's an excellent question, because you gave the example earlier of that family in Paris, Riverside, okay?
Which had never been reported, by the way.
Right, which is, a problem.
Yeah.
Because obviously, this is, definition of abuse.
Well, they never let them outside except for 3 o'clock in the morning, evidently.
Definition of abuse, right? When people hear juvenile dependency, they assume that they're all like that. It's them. The parents are the, evildoers who are not, making it. They're terrible. They do.
But there are
terrible
people
things.
who are wrongly accused.
There are people who are wrongly accused. I would say that they're not in the majority. If you're on the radar of social services, probably something happened. The question, see, it's all about degrees, and that's the hardest thing to understand.
Okay.
You remember the earlier statement about risk of harm? How do you define that?
Okay.
It's not an easy thing. Oftentimes, social workers are humans. They make their own calls, in my opinion. By law, they're required to exhaust their resources before they remove. Oftentimes, it feels like, from my point of view, that part kind of gets left out. It becomes kind of perfunctory. They make the call that, you know what, if they showed up on our radar, we better keep looking. We're not going to let this go. We're going to keep digging until we find something.
When should a parent contact you? I mean,
that's an excellent question. So, financially speaking, my least profitable case is emotionally the most satisfying. When parent or guardian picks up the phone, finds me. It's not easy to find us because there's literally a handful of private kids.
well, it would help to pronounce your name again.
I wasn't talking about
I know, but
individually. I was talking about
I know a
counsel
Tesla.
as a
That's
group.
why
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
Tseselsky,
But this is Tseselsky.
if they get to me at the right time, what I'm able to do is I'm able to tell them, look, here's what it is. I know you're scared. I know they're going to ask you weird questions. Here's what you need to get ready for.
Are your consultations free?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, keep going.
I told you, I don't make any money doing this.
Okay.
In fact,
they're hard cases.
in fact, I am most proud of moments when I'm able to talk myself out of a case. Because if I tell them the right information at the right time, explain to them that, look, they got a job to do. They're going to ask you certain questions. Let me give you a perfect example. Social workers, when they first come,
They're calling now. Keep going.
Okay.
No.
when they come into contact with a family, and they ask a parent, okay, is there a relative we can place the children with? Okay, well, they do that, and when they come to the relative, they'll start asking questions of the relative, such as, "Hey, what do you know what the parents did?" And the grandparent usually is like, "Well, I don't know anything about this." By the way, are you ready to provide permanent placement for the children? And the grandparent is like, "What? You just met this family. You're talking about removing them permanently?"
Oh my
They
God.
don't understand that they're required to do this by law.
Okay.
And my job is to explain, look, they're going to ask some weird questions.
Okay.
It's okay. It's
Okay.
part of their job.
Okay.
Don't get freaked out.
Yeah.
Don't get combative.
Okay.
Don't lawyer up. I tell them, listen, you don't want to hire me right now. If you hire me right now, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull, telling them, hey, there's something wrong here. Come look at me even more. I'm suspicious. I tell them, don't do that. Just understand where they're coming from and try to answer their concerns in such a way that is honest and forthright, and at the same time, I tell them, look, they're gonna go digging, they're gonna go fishing. You don't need to volunteer everything.
I was
If they
gonna
ask,
now-
be truthful.
I
But
was
you
gonna
don't, you
say-
don't have to, like, they're not your therapist.
I'm a hardcore family law girl, so this
Right.
is very interesting to me because
Right.
what you're saying is totally different than, per se, let's say what a personal injury lawyer would say, because the first thing they're going to tell you is don't talk to the insurance company.
Or
at all.
criminal, it's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
Same deal. Now some full disclosure, some juvenile defense attorneys will take a hard line and say, you don't talk to them at all, ever. What I try to explain to the clients is, look, it's not like that. It's not criminal defense. You can't just tell them to go pound sand. You gotta talk to these people at some point.
Right.
You can request a lawyer.
Right.
And oftentimes it's my job on the phone to gauge, do they really need a lawyer at this point?
All right.
Sometimes they do, and I tell them. Most of the times they don't. Most of the times it's just a misunderstanding. They can clear it up, and then they don't need me.
Okay.
And then a year later, I go to my Yelp and somebody left a review, and I'm like, I don't remember talking to you, but thank you.
Oh.
It's because I talked myself out of the case that they never had to hire me. And I'm okay with that because truthfully, it's the most satisfying part of my job to know that all the heartache all the upheaval that comes to a family when they're involved in juvenile dependency system. If I manage to help them avoid that, oh, makes my week, makes my month.
Oh my God. Well, Mr. Tseselsky.
Yeah.
Okay, spell that for me.
Tseselsky.
Beautiful. So I think that's wonderful because that's a different twist. Juvenile dependency is a very tender area of law, and so to have you care so passionately about the cases is just wonderful, because it can be a hard call. Like I said, Judge Diaz has appeared on our show many times, yes, and he's a wonderful judge. He's a judge, and he's been honored as a hero, and which he should be, and he's done some spectacular work. And actually, and Judge Cunningham is a fabulous judge, and he's my inspiration. Judge Mitchell is a fabulous judge, Craig Mitchell, and he works with the 100 Men Running Mission, and Judge Filer is absolutely fantastic, and God forbid if I forget somebody, but these men have been just kings among kings, and they care about our community, and I am so honored to have you on the show. And once again, forgive me, and I ask your wife to forgive me for mispronouncing your name.
She kept her last name.
Oh, she didn't take Tseselsky?
It's a family tradition. She's third generation of women in our family to keep her last name.
Oh my God!
We have a good laugh about this.
Well, we have 1 minute to wrap this up. You are an excellent source about information, and once again, your consultations are no charge. And
I'm not the only one who does it, and I would recommend anyone who's interested to learn more about juvenile dependency.
Yes.
There's excellent sources on the internet nowadays.
Okay.
If you go to California Judicial Council, they'll have information on there. If you go to lacourt.org, Los Angeles Superior Court website has excellent information. My favorite, however, for juvenile dependency, that's not something that you would know just by going to the website. It's something called the dog book. That's what the lawyers call it. It's if you
the dog book.
The dog book. If you Google
DOG.
DOG. It's got the picture of a dog on it. That's why it's called the dog book.
Okay.
It's prepared by the Office of Administration of the Courts.
Okay.
If you Google the dog book, juvenile dependency, Office of Administration of the Courts, it'll pop up, and it's a searchable PDF document, which is literally like the Bible for juvenile dependency.
And that's our gift.
That's a good
Thank
place to
you,
end it.
Mr. Tseselsky. Thank you for being on From the Halls of Justice.
Absolutely.
You have been wonderful. Tune in next week, and please join us. Stay with us. I promise.
No worries.